What if you could create wealth in real estate without depending on banks, without waiting for perfect market conditions, and without letting interest rates determine whether your deals succeed or fail? What if the biggest opportunity in real estate isn't just finding the right property, but knowing how to structure the right deal? Because the investors who win at the highest level understand something most people miss, and that is the deal is only as powerful as the strategy behind it. Welcome to Raising Private Money. I'm Jay Conner, the Private Money Authority, and today I'm bringing you a conversation with someone who has spent over 30 years mastering creative real estate strategies, seller financing, and building wealth through smart deal structures. His name is Mark Monroe. Now, Mark has been involved in over $500 million in real estate and business transactions. He's a real estate developer, private equity investor, best-selling author of Creative Real Estate Investing, host of the Real Estate Power Play podcast, and a trusted mentor to investors all across the country. But here's what I really want you to pay attention to. Mark doesn't just know how to buy real estate, he knows how to create opportunities. He's personally raised over $2 million in private money, understands how to build relationships, structure deals, and create win-win solutions for investors and private money lenders. And beyond the numbers and the transactions, Mark brings a perspective that most people never develop. As a cancer survivor, he understands what it means to fight, to adapt, and to keep moving forward when the odds are against you. So if you're a real estate investor looking for new ways to fund deals, create more opportunities, and think differently about wealth creation, this episode is going to open your eyes and you're going to love it. Get ready, because you're about to learn from one of the best in the business. In just a moment, you're going to meet Mark Monroe right after this.
If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
Welcome to the show, Mark. Glad to have you on.
Sure, I'm excited. Looking forward to it. Had you over on our podcast, and everybody liked it. It was very well watched. We had quite a few people watched having you on, so you brought a lot of value. So hopefully I can do the same in return for your guest.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. Well, Mark, you've been involved in millions, over $500 million in real estate and business transactions over the last 30 years. Take us all the way back to the beginning, the turning point, if you will. What was the moment or the experience that changed the way you look at real estate and made you realize there was a better way to create wealth than simply buying properties the traditional way?
Sure. So, I thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. So we've been in this game for quite some time, both of us. So I was 19 years old, living in a small town in Vermont, and I did the old Carleton Sheets course, if you will, back in the day. And went through that, had no clue what I was doing. I took cardboard boxes, cut it up, and I got a wet waterproof magic marker. We buy houses. I went around the town, put them all up on telephone poles, and didn't realize it. I got in trouble by the municipality in a couple of towns. Like, you gotta go take them down. I'm like, well, I didn't know. I'm sorry about that. So I went around and started taking them down. And this guy called me up. He goes, "Hey, I got this mobile home for sale. It's worth 18. It's worth 21,000. I want 18 for it." And I'm like, "I'm not interested in a mobile home." So then he calls me back a week later. He goes, "Give me $15,000. It's worth 21,000." I'm like, "I'm not interested." Another week goes by. He goes, "Give me 12,000. It's worth 21." I'm like, "Well, do you own the land?" He goes, "No, it's in a mobile home park." I said, "Sorry, I'm not interested." A month goes by. He calls me back again. He goes, "Give me $6,000. It's worth 21,000." So I go, "Why are you selling?" He goes, "I have a lot of rent due. I don't have it. I don't live in there." I said, "Well, I told you." I do the boomerang. "I told you I'm not interested. But this is what I'll do to help you out. I'll give you 3,000." He goes, "Oh, give me 4,000." I'm like, "No, I'm not interested. I'll take three." I was, "All right, I'll take the 3,000." I said, "Okay, I have to go by the office supply store to get a contract because we didn't have it, and I want to do an inspection." So I hung up the phone, called the newspaper, placed an ad in the newspaper, mobile home for sale for $25,000, owner financing with $3,000 down. First lady called me up. Her and her husband went out, looked at it. They liked it. They gave me $3,000. I took that, gave to the seller, ended up creating a mortgage note for it was like 300 and something dollars a month over 7 years, like at an 8% interest rate. I had no, it was my car payment, insurance payment at 19 years old for 7 years. I had no clue what I was doing. So that was my real first deal, learning how to get into a deal with no money down because I grew up in poverty in Vermont, I had no money. At that time, I didn't learn about credit cards, and I had 28 credit cards all maxed out. I was at that time, at least they weren't high limits or like $300 $500, but that's a lot of money to a 19-year-old. So that was my first and then I got stuck into the corporate world for about 5 years, and then I jumped back into it like at the age 24, 25, and I went full time at that time. So that was pretty much my journey.
Wow, what an amazing early journey story. Uh, from that story, your mobile home story, your first deal, what lessons, and I'm already thinking of multiple, what lessons did you learn from that first deal you did?
I mean, everything. It was my first one. Every step of the way was a lesson. Not putting them up on telephone poles, not using, if you do, putting signs up, not using a regular phone number. Um, Understanding like the paperwork, I'm sure was kind of screwed up because we didn't use an attorney. I just created a promissory note, like a bill of sales because it was considered a motor vehicle. Um, so I did do a note. I did record the note on like a US, but it was just so many different lessons, like you said. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but learning what to look for. I had no clue what to look for in a property at that time. I was just kind of just winging it, if you will. So I kind of got lucky, to be frank, to the whole process without a proper mentor walking me through it. Just kind of going off of, Carlton Sheets was what, cassettes or something like that back then. Nobody really
Right,
looking.
right, right. That's an amazing story. You have spent decades, literally decades, mastering seller financing strategies. And there's your first deal. You did seller financing to your buyer. Why do you believe seller financing is one of the most powerful tools available to real estate investors today, especially in a market where many investors are struggling with, higher interest rates and, they don't know about private money like you and I do, and tighter lending requirements?
Yeah, I mean you're not jumping through all the red tape with the banks and lenders. They have guidelines that they have to follow if they're holding the paper or if they're securitizing and selling that paper off into the secondary market. It just gives a lot more flexibility. You can negotiate with the seller, just like the lenders can't do negotiating. This is cut and dry. This is the guidelines. You meet it. If not, then you can't move forward. But I mean, a lot of times us being self-employed, we don't show a lot of income on our returns. People may have credit challenges. Also, you may not showing a lot of assets, if you will, because if you're in the business for quite some time, you want to start protecting some of those. It's just so many, and then you can get into properties with no money down if you know how to understand the seller and how to motivate, and then also sell it. Like us as an investor, we sell those, and a lot of times we like to sell those off into the secondary market because we're getting that private money buying our mortgage notes. Because there's another whole, we're talking at the front end of originating notes, but there's another whole animal on the back end in the seller financing, buying and selling notes and working with private investors. So you can work with private investors on the front end, using their capital as a partner of buying it, or you create the note and then knowing you're selling the note off to a private investor, like physicians and doctors. There's so much capital out there that people have in a retirement fund that you can learn. If you learn how to do all that, you can do on the front end, the back end. And as you know, there's so many different ways, and you're the master at it. And, we all are wanting to raise private capital. So you always want to look for, as you're originating deals and trying to find deals, you're always wanting a good CRM for your sellers. And then you also want another tag, if you will, in your CRM for your passive investors that you work with to help you out.
Mark, you've talked with many, many, many real estate investors over the years. Given those conversations and your observations of other real estate investors, what do you think is their biggest misconception or misconceptions that investors have about getting or convincing or having sellers of properties to finance the properties for the real estate investor? What's their holdup?
I mean, really what it comes down to is when you're working with a seller, I always tell people, think of it the first time you went on that date with your significant other. Okay. The reason why most of these sellers are going to do business is because they like you, they trust you, you're going to do what you're saying. So I always go into it. 80% of my phone calls just getting to know the seller. Just the same way I want them to get to know me as who I am. And I want to get to know them to know who that they are, because I want to make sure they're not a crazy seller as well. But I love seller financing because sometimes, especially if you're starting out and you don't know where to go to raise capital, use the seller's equity as the capital partner in the deal. It's really the same thing. Instead of going out there trying to raise capital from ABC or which is great, like your local dry cleaners or restaurants you go to, you already have the seller, and if the seller has equity in that property or a note or whatever on property, if you learn how to leverage it and how to understand how to underwrite it and make sure that the deal works correctly in the numbers, then it really comes down to listening to the seller, why they're selling, what are they planning on doing with the capital? If you understand those things and how to solve the seller's problems, that's how you can get into these monies with very little to no money down. I mean, I can go on in different stories on and on where I had one seller in the Georgia area that wanted $30,000 to put down. He wanted us to put $30,000 down. I found out that he needed $25,000 to buy a camper. He was going to go camping, and then he wanted some spending money. Listening to him, built a rapport. Ask, like I always tell people, think about the last time you went camping. Where did you go? Waking up in the morning with that sunrise coming up, like cool, having coffee or tea or whatever, with that sunrise coming up and doing your hiking or biking or kayaking, whatever it is. You create that visual of them, what the life is like. So once that property is gone, so they want to do that. And then I came back to him and I found out really what he needed. He needed $25,000 for a camper, and everybody else was offering him low down payments. And he had over 12 to 15 offers. And then he had good credit. He banked with the credit union. I said, hey, go ahead and take a loan out the credit union and buy your camper. And what I'll do is on the 20th of every month, we'll automatically make the payments on your behalf of the camper. So we're cash flowing $475 a month on top of making this seller's campers payment monthly. We solved this problem, and then we put $3,500 down in that deal. So that's just one example of many.
Now that is creative. By you simply meeting the seller where they were mentally, what they actually wanted to accomplish. And that's fantastic. You got them to go borrow the money, but you make the payments for them. That's a cousin to subject to taking over the camper debt.
Exactly. And then to be frank, we got into it for $3,500 plus some closing costs, and we sold that on a lease option, and our tenant buyer put $18,000 down. So we put money in a pocket up front, cash flow 475. Now I do recommend don't spend that money. You want to hold that money in reserves, because if that tenant stops paying, you want to have some capital to make sure that you step up and make, because you promise that you're going to make that payment for that camper to that seller. So you need to make sure that you follow through. So I always make sure you hold some money in reserves.
Yeah, that's very, very smart advice. A lot of real estate investors, they think the only way to buy real estate is to bring all the cash or to get a traditional loan. They're not familiar with these creative strategies. So now we've got the high value teaching moment that you can share, Mark, and that is, how do you train real estate investors to look at a property differently and create, as you just shared, these win-win structures that allows deals to happen when other real estate investors walk away?
It's listening. The bottom line is listen and finding out their motivation, why they're selling. Because within seller financing, there's a lot of different creative seller financing strategies. You have what's called the subject to, keeping an existing mortgage in place. You have what's called a lease option, where you can do a lease agreement and sublet it to the tenant buyer. You can do an agreement for deed, a land contract. So it really comes down to listening to the seller. And the way I look at it is each strategy, and you have to master each strategy and understand it. But once you've gone through it, a few of them, it's pretty simple. But you want to listen to the seller. For example, if I'm talking to a realtor and the seller's not financial distress, there's no way I'm going to pitch a subject to. Okay, subject to, just so you guys are aware, is like if you have a mortgage on a property and you can't sell your home, you're transferring the deed to me and I'm making the payments just like I was doing on that camper. But if you understand what they're trying to do and are financially distressed and they trust you, then I'll go ahead and pitch. I'll pitch like an agreement for deed or land contract. That's kind of what I did with that camper situation, or just lease option. It really comes down to why they're selling and listening to them and how to solve the problem. I keep repeating that over, but that's really where it comes down to. It's all about relationship and just doing what you're saying, what you're going to do, and make sure that you're yourself and treat the sellers like, and don't think of it's a game and you want to make it a win for everybody. It's got to be a win for the seller. It's got to be a win for the buyer. It's got to be a win for you. So when you talk to people and you're going down that path, treat it as how would you want somebody treating your mother? Would you want them to do the right thing by half your mother? So just treat the sellers that way when you're going through the process, and you shouldn't have any problems.
That reminds me of what my dad used to say a lot of. My dad would say, speaking of the mobile home story, my dad at one time, his company was the largest retailer of mobile homes in the nation. Can you believe? Wallace Connery.
That's awesome.
He just passed away a couple of months ago, 92 and a half years old. But he used to say a lot of things that were very, very wise. But he'd say, when you're in a negotiation, you got to leave a little meat on the bone for everybody. And about 10 years ago, he gave me a 14-karat gold doggy bone that's on my keychain to remind me to leave a little bit of meat on the bone for everybody. Private money, Mark, you like myself, you've raised millions of dollars in private money to supplement funding your deals. What did you learn about attracting private money? And there's more than one lesson that most real estate investors completely misunderstand when it comes to raising private money.
I would say that a lot of people go into it thinking like, they're like, oh, you're going to your parent your first time and, you turn 16, Dad, can I take the car for a ride? They're kind of going down that path, and your dad's like, the thing about it is when you're raising private money, you're making a win for the investor. So you're giving them opportunity to make money alternatively through different avenues. And that's probably the biggest thing that a lot of investors think like, oh, I need money for my deal and I got to go out there. Don't think of it like that. You're creating an opportunity because you want them. Once you're doing well in your deal, they're making money, and then people come to you and like, oh yeah, if you have any more deals, let me know because I want to be a part of that opportunity. So think of it that way. You're creating wealth for your private capital investors on that side of it. And a lot of times people don't think of it that way. And that's probably the mindset. You need to change that mindset, because I was like that in the beginning. That's why I learned how to do seller financing, because I was afraid I didn't have the contacts of going out there in my 20s and didn't have that track record to be able to show like people felt comfortable. You had to go to your local friends and your family, and it's a weird situation in the beginning. You're still learning. So think of it, you're creating opportunity. There's so many places to raise private capital. I mean, I could tell you one of my goals where I love going to raise capital, but there's so many different ways of doing that.
Sure. Well, one of the biggest, most common mistakes I see real estate investors make is they have taken really, really bad advice and tried to raise money. And the bad advice they've taken is they heard the guru stand up on stage and say, oh, just get the deal under contract. The money will show up. That's the most stupid thing I ever heard in my life. I mean, you get a deal under contract. Is a drone going to, fly over your front porch and drop you a bag of money? Or they'll say money finds good deals. They'll say that. Well, has money got legs? Is it running around? No. It makes so much more sense to me. And I love how you said it. You're presenting an opportunity. So I have an opportunity with my private lending program. The deal doesn't matter what the opportunity is. I'm paying the same interest rate, which by the way is 8%, no points, ever since February of 2009. My private lenders love it. And so we separate initial conversations of the opportunity and how it works, and then having a deal for them to fund. I never talk about a deal. I never pitch a deal. We talk about the opportunity. They love it. they, let us know how much money they got to invest and want to start with, or they've got retirement funds. We'll introduce them to the self-directed IRA company they can move their money over to. And then I'll call them back up in 2 or 3 weeks with what I call the good news phone call, and give them the good news that I can now put their money to work, and tell them the after repaired value of the property and the funding required that matches up to what they got and when closing is. And I'm going to have the real estate attorney email them the wiring instructions, and boom, that's it. I never ask if they want to fund the deal. Of course they want to fund the deal. They've been waiting for the good news phone call, right?
Exactly. No, you hit the nail on the head. It's just about, they want that opportunity, especially if you start having them follow you and they see you doing deals. I mean, people are getting in line, and like I don't have enough deals for the capital people that are behind me at the moment right now, and it will happen. They start seeing more and more, and once you get it going and people see it, it's just. But you and definitely you wanna. I'd recommend definitely jumping into Jade, because you do need some guidance on how to follow the steps and how to have those conversations. Like you, like I never pitch a deal up front. I build relationships, just like I mentioned before with the seller. Just get to know each other, and it's all about relationships, because you also, with us, you don't want to take capital from somebody that's going to be a pain in the ass. Where's going on in my deal? What's all this and where's that? How's my capital doing? Then they start thinking it's their deal and it's not. So you interview them at the same time they're interviewing you. So keep that in mind. And a lot of times people may jump and grab money at a deal that could be more of a headache than it's worth in the long run.
For sure. When someone, an individual, and just to make sure everybody knows that's listening to this episode, when we're talking private money, we're not talking hard money. We're not talking institutional money. We're talking about borrowing money, doing business with another human being with no middle person involved. So when someone has money to invest, liquid capital, retirement funds, whatever, as you know, Mark, they're not just investing in a deal. Quite frankly, they're really not investing in the deal. They're investing in you, the borrower. They're investing in you, who is behind the deal. So question for you, Mark, what would you say are the key things you believe real estate investors must do to build trust and create long-term private money relationships?
Make sure you take care of your investors. That's like the number one thing. You will have deals sometimes that will end up going sideways, or expenses that come up. I've done deals before where I end up losing money because I wanted to take care of my investors. Because once you go bad on an investor loan, it's going to hurt your reputation, and they'll come back as long as you take care of them and you do what you're saying and to perform, or whatever structure that you're doing. If you're doing a note through typically what we want them to do is they invest in their retirement fund, because all that capital gains and then all the profits stays back in that retirement fund. I'm doing some affordability land development projects right now, and every single investor and everything that we're doing in there, even myself, I'm doing it inside my solar 401k. I have my investors loans going through the IRAs, so it's staying inside the retirement fund, so it helps them from the tax benefit, so that we're also not getting hit with the capital gains on asset. But they're typically set up as a lender. And I forgot what we were talking about here. What was your question?
Well, what is it that they need to do to build trust and create the long-term private money relationships? And as you said, you take care of your private lenders regardless as to what's happening on your P&L or your balance sheet.
100%. Take care of them. They're the number one. They're the top of the food chain. So you want to make sure that they're fed before you, as it goes down through. And if your profits, it goes both ways. You may lose, your profits are going to be tighter, but there are going to be times where your profits are going to be a lot stronger because you end up coming out ahead. So you always want to make sure you underwrite your deal, and you're always giving yourself some leg room, some breathing room in there in your numbers whenever you're underwriting, to make sure. And just always do what you're saying. And if something happens, go to them and have the conversation ahead of time than having after the fact, because your name and your credibility means everything in this industry.
Absolutely. You've got a best-selling book. It's called Creative Real Estate Investing. And for those of you that see a video, he might show you a picture of his book. In your experience, and you probably covered this in the book, why do some real estate investors struggle to think creatively when it comes to solving problems, finding deals, creating wealth?
That they need capital. That's probably the one big thing is capital and credit. And you don't need any of that. I mean, you, there's so many ways of understanding and educating yourself and going out there and getting into real estate, and you don't need capital. Most of us, like I didn't have capital. I actually, I grew up in poverty in Vermont, as I mentioned. I remember when I was 7 or 8 years old, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, my dad left. When I was young, all we ate was Kraft and macaroni and cheese out of a box for 3 months straight. And I started working to help put food on the table. And I, learned about credit cards. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I thought credit cards are great. And I didn't understand finance at a young age. So it took me a little bit. And I had dings in my credit, like at 19, 20 years old. And you don't need capital. You just need knowledge and surround yourself with like-minded individuals. And the mindset, the key, I can't tell you the mindset, like mindset is number one. You have to have the mindset. And if you're around toxic people, cut those toxic people out of your life and start surrounding yourself with people that are going to rise you. Like nowadays, I like going into the room where I'm the dumbest person in the room because I want to learn from them. And that's the number one thing. If you're around people that are toxic, you're never going to grow. You have to get away from those people. And then the other thing, if you're not failing, you're not learning. Everybody will fail. Don't quit. That's a learning experience. Look at Elon Musk, how many times he failed with SpaceX. I can't tell you how many times I see people come in, they fail once and they're done. Fail is you're going to learn from it. So just remember that you will fail. Just treat it as a learning experience and move on.
My wife, Carol Joy, and I, we were so blessed to meet, have a conversation with, and hear him speak, John Maxwell, last year. I think he's written, I don't know, 70 or 80 books. But one of my favorite books that he has written is called Failing Forward. And it's a great book. And during the Q&A session, a member in the audience, after John Maxwell's presentation or after his talk, he opened it up for Q&A, and a lady asked a question. She says, Mr. Maxwell, what would you say, what is one attribute that you've got that puts you ahead of the crowd as to why you've been so successful? He says, well, it's real simple. He says, I just fail more than anybody else does. Well, she didn't understand the question. He says, one person might try 10 things and fail 7 times and have a success with 3. He says, well, I'm not going to try 10 things. He says, I'm going to try 100 things. If I've got the same percentage, I still have got 30 wins out of 100 tries. And of course, I'm sure you've heard the statistics on, the professional athletes and how many times they miss shots and all that kind of stuff. It's the same thing. Speaking of mindset, you've built businesses, you've completed hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions. You're a cancer survivor. Looking back, what has resilience taught you about success, both in business and life?
Life is short. You got to enjoy it and just be around positive people. I mean, and just, again, it goes back being positive. Like that was one of the big things where I recovered from cancer pretty quickly because I kept my mindset. I knew manifest it. So you always want to manifest and always move forward. And it's the mind. The mind is going to really get you where you want to achieve. I mean, think about it. That's something that we all have. We all have a mind. And how many times have anybody here worked for a company and you're working and you have that one toxic employee that complains and it starts spreading around the company? But when a company is doing really good, or a sports team, take like the Cowboys back in the day, or the Yankees, or even New England Patriots, when everybody comes together in a positive and they have a good mindset, that's how everybody flourishes. I'm sure you probably heard of Earl Nightingale, that he
yes.
wrote the book, and he talked about a couple things in his book. And it's a great book. This guy goes back, I think, in the 50s. I think it was, when you listen to it was on a record player, And he said something. He goes, you can go outside and plant in the ground seeds. Is that seeds going to grow up as poison ivy and toxic, or is it going to grow up and become a beautiful flower and a rose and look gorgeous? So whatever you plant into your mind, into the ground, it's the same thing. That's what it's going to grow. So no matter where you're at in life and health, relationships, any type of obstacles that come up, because it does come up. We all go through it. We all have issues. We all have something that happened dramatically in our lives. It's how you handle it and how you get through it. And it's with your mind. And if you can control your mind and get through it, everything else falls into place. You start surrounding yourself and spending time, getting things done quickly. That's one of the other things. So, anyways, this stuff is great. And it's good if you're listening to this right now. That means you're taking a step in the direction. So now just keep moving forward and keep moving forward, and you'll do really well in the business. Just keep focusing. And if you ever get sidetracked, come back and listen to some type of podcast, video, something that's going to pull you back in and get you motivated.
Mark, I know we've got a lot of listeners here to this episode that is wanting to continue the conversation and learn more from you. What's the best way for people to reach out to you and get connected?
They can just Google me, Mark Monroe, MarkMonroe. Google Mark Monroe Real Estate. I'll pop up everywhere. But my website is mark-monroe.com, Monroe, MONROE.com, or just Google Mark Monroe Real Estate.
That's awesome. Mark, I want to thank you for being on Raising Private Money and for sharing your decades of experience, your wisdom, the strategies that have helped you complete just hundreds of millions of dollars in transaction, raising millions in private money, creating opportunities. Man, you have been so valuable to the listeners. Thank you so much.
Jay, thank you so much for having me on. Have a great one, guys. Be well.
You got it. And for those of you listening right now, I hope you realize what you just heard. This wasn't just another conversation about real estate. This was a masterclass in thinking differently, having the right mindset, because the real estate investors who win at the highest level aren't the ones who have the most money, the most resources, or the most connections when they start. That's exactly what Mark shared. They're the ones who learn how to see opportunities that others overlook, whether it's seller financing, creative deal structures, building relationships with private money lenders. The biggest breakthroughs happen when you stop asking, how can I afford this deal? And start asking, how can I structure this deal? Think about Mark's first mobile home story. Now, here's my challenge for you. If you know another real estate investor, and I believe you do, who needs to think differently about funding deals, creating opportunities, and building wealth in today's market, do them a favor. Share this episode with them right now. Send them a link. Text it to a friend. Post it inside your real estate investing group. Put it on your social media and tag me, because there is someone in your circle right now who is sitting on the sidelines, not because they don't have the desire, but because they don't know the strategies that you heard about today. And that one share from you could be the thing that changes the trajectory of your connection, your friend's real estate investing business. Also, make sure you subscribe to Raising Private Money so you never miss an episode where we bring you the best investors, entrepreneurs, and experts who are revealing the strategies behind raising money, funding deals, creating financial freedom through real estate. Remember, deals are everywhere, opportunities are everywhere, but the real estate investors who know how to create relationships, structure solutions, and access to capital, those are the investors who win. I'm Jay Conner, the Private Money Authority. Thanks for listening to Raising Private Money, and I'll see you right here on the next episode.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/moneyguide. That's jconner.com/moneyguide and download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/moneyguide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.